Getting ready to buy or sell a home in 30, 60, or 90 days? Check out BundleSelect.com to find out how you could save 20% or more on your entire transaction, real estate, lending, and title. With BundleSelect.com, technology and a personal concierge are at your service to save you time and money. The real estate world is changing, and it's finally in your favor. BundleSelect's hand-picked team of experts will compete for your business, so you'll save thousands of dollars by bundling services. BundleSelect.com gives you all the control, including using your own realtor. I'm Joe Kuchera with Real Estate Radio Live, and I have been on the radio educating consumers for years. I'm here to tell you BundleSelect.com is the newest way to save money on real estate. By bundling services like real estate, lending, and title, you could save tens of thousands of dollars. We'll even take care of your move for free anywhere in the Bay Area. Visit BundleSelect.com. That's BundleSelect.com.
The 20% savings estimates are based on industry averages, and the free move is provided that the minimum amount of vendor savings covers the cost of the move. Real estate broker CalBRE 00466-902.
Welcome to Real Estate Radio Live, an informative and engaging podcast discussing everything you need to know about the world of real estate. Your host, Joe Kuchera, provides you with insight and guidance on how to buy, sell, finance, and invest in real estate. He also offers real estate tax management strategies, new construction advice, home improvement tips, and much, much more. And now, to guide you around the world of real estate, here's your host and Real Estate Radio Live team leader, Joe Kuchera.
Welcome in, Joe Kuchera with Real Estate Radio Live as we wind down the week here. Just a reminder, for more information, you can tune in to reradiolive.com. That's reradiolive.com. If you want to reach me during the week, it's 408-838-9060. Most of you know, for over 7 years now, the focus has been education and information. We continue to do that. I'd like to think that we continue to build the value here at Real Estate Radio Live. One example here is Mr. Jack Russo is with us again today. Jack, good to have you back.
Thank you.
We're trying every week or so, depends on the schedule. Jack is the managing partner with the computer law group in Palo Alto. Our topic is starting something in Silicon Valley. This is number 5, I believe, we're going to revisit today, right?
Is it 5 or 6?
I think it's 5, right, Ron? Yes. So it's 5. We're going to revisit in the pros and cons of the entity I think we're going to talk about today.
Right.
There's a lot going on in Silicon Valley, so we're going to continue this series. It's been very popular. For those tuning in on Facebook, thank you for following. Thank you for commenting. Continue to do so. Remember to download the podcast. That's where you can follow the show and then listen to all the past shows if you could get caught up that way as well. Before we get started, as usual, Jack, you want to give our listeners just a quick update or background, I should say?
Sure.
And then we could jump into our topic.
Sure. Jack Russo, managing partner, Computer Law Group. We're in Palo Alto, California, footsteps away from Stanford University off of University Avenue. We also have offices in San Francisco, though we really see ourselves as Silicon Valley lawyers. A lot of the millennials are wanting to be in San Francisco, so you have to cater to their schedule, which we do. And so the phone number is 650-327-9800. The website is computerlaw.com, and the email is jack@computerlaw. And I actually re-listened to a couple of the podcasts, and I thought what was not clear, and we should make it clear, is that people today, if they're starting something, they typically want to start something that looks real from the get-go. That is, the days are over when the VCs would do the work of starting the legal and pay. That's over. That just doesn't happen anymore.
Right.
They wait till you have some true customer cash flow that they can talk to and do diligence and say, this is going to work. The dogs are eating the dog food. They are happy. So that means you have to make a choice about a business entity. And there are lots of choices, and it's very hard. A lot of people do it. A lot of mistakes get made. They go to LegalZoom, and they get some prepackaged choice, and we can talk about the pros and cons of that. It's certainly something to think about. But remember, you're pretty far down the road of thinking your idea is going to work, and you've prototyped it. You've done hopefully some testing. You've done some competitive analysis because you might be building the mousetrap that's already out there in Walmart that you cannot possibly compete against. And what I brought in as a prop, because it plays into the point I'm going to make about shielding yourself from liability, is someone referred to me the future of the umbrella. Now, you would have thought an umbrella could not possibly be perfected to a better degree. Well, they created something called the Inside Out, and the brand name is Better Brella, Better Brella, and sort of on the handle. This is being
advertised on TV already. I think,
so what they did is they kind of, I'll put it up here, and even though it's probably bad luck to do it, I won't do it all the way. The umbrella opens up in reverse, and I have no stake in these guys. I mean, I bought this umbrella, and the reason I bought it is it's a reverse way of opening. So you see, it sort of goes the opposite approach, and then when it's wet, as it is today, because it's the reason I have it, you can shake it out, and it kind of shakes out the rain and doesn't come, because this is dry, right? So the water, so it actually is better. So now they probably would have filed a provisional patent application. Of course, I got to keep it closed now. They probably would have gotten their trademark intent to use registration done. They probably would have gotten some marketing materials generated. And then they have to figure out how are they doing distribution. And so the second prop I brought in is no one could have believed that a toothbrush would be improved, but these guys, Quip, and they're doing a lot of advertising, it's QUIP, made a smaller.
So what's the principal difference
there? The principal difference here is you've got a simple, replaceable brush that's delivered monthly on subscription with toothpaste. So you're always going to have a fresh brush. They got the cost down to peanuts, and if you buy it in subscription for a year and you use it more regularly because you could take it with you to work, which a lot of people don't do, because it's too big. This is actually pretty small. I have it inside the holder. You could just put it in your pocket. Again, these are folks I don't know, but presumably they got their design done, and they got their packaging done, and they got their provisional patent filed. They got their materials registered with the Copyright Office if they think they might be copied there. They do all the IP stuff, and then the question becomes, what's the business that's actually going to be the vessel for collecting the money that's going to come in?
So how does, when you get to that point and you're ready to decide, how do you go about, how do you go about trying to figure out what is the best form of doing it?
Right, so let's start with the extremely dumb things that some people do, and then they get burnt.
All right.
I don't really need a lawyer, and I don't really need a corporation, and I don't really need an entity. I'm just going to do this as sole proprietor. What does that represent? It's the opposite of having an umbrella. It's the opposite of having protection. If there's a lawsuit because someone pokes their eye with that umbrella, or someone breaks a gum with the toothbrush, or something dangerous happens, although these are not highly dangerous products, you are individually liable for the tort that's committed or for the violation that's alleged or proven. It's also difficult to hire an employee. You can hire the employee, but you're personally liable for that employee's salary, benefits, and the rest. Now, there are people that run businesses out of sole proprietorships. They do. A lot of service businesses have historically been run out of sole proprietorships. They get a business name that they publish, which is called a DBA, doing business as. The publication happens in a newspaper of a certain size, and there's a little box, and you'll often see it saying, notice, this person is doing business as a sole proprietor. And they have a name that's called a fictitious name, but there's no entity protection. There's nothing that stops a lawsuit against them. There's nothing that will prevent an ex-employee or a fired employee from filing a wrongful termination case. So that person's going to have individual liability. Now, it gets even worse if you imagine what I just described, another way that's wrong to do business, and in fact, this was the original formation of Apple, was as a general partnership. The lawyers didn't make the mistake. Jobs and Wozniak made the mistake. Literally, they didn't go to legal right away. They actually started their little, homebrew, go out to show what they had at these trade shows, as there were three partners that had literally a general partnership. If you go back to the history, they had a guy who's viewed himself as a co-founder. I don't know if they fully agreed with it. But essentially, there were three of them in a partnership, a general partnership, which meant If Jobs was driving to a trade show for the purpose of showing the device and gets into a car accident, Wozniak and the other guy are jointly and severally liable for the tort.
Yeah.
And let's say he's driving a car that has no insurance. Possible, maybe even probable back in those days because they didn't have much money. Well, at the end of the day, there's liability for each of the three of those partners, and any one of those partners could also cause liability to the other two. So it expands the liability, it multiplies the liability. So whenever you see a team that's in formation, the sole proprietor cannot possibly be the right model because the general partnership is not the right model. So that you immediately limit then, in your own mind, one of two choices, either a limited liability company called an LLC or a corporation. And there's flavors for each of these things. And what's important to realize is that that entity to be creating a separate personhood, because it literally is a separate person or a separate being, has to have some real capitalization.
Yeah.
Now, what's Silicon Valley has thrived on the view that the capitalization can be simple assignment of the intellectual property rights into that entity. And that's one way to capitalize a company. I don't have much cash. I came up with the idea. I'm just making this up. I'm not the inventor. I came up with the idea of the inside-outside umbrella. I got the design done. I got the provisionals, patents filed. I got the trademarks registered or intent to use registrations. I got various copyright materials registered. I did an assignment agreement into, let's take the simplest version, into what might be a single member limited liability company. Now, the benefit of that is I now have the shield of that company. So I can hire employees and feel confident that if I run that correctly, I will not have individual liability to those employees. I can also feel confident that if I want to take money, let's take a loan, and there's no guarantee, assuming there's no guarantee, I can have the LLC sign the loan agreement and get the loan, and just the LLC is liable and not me personally. Now, whether someone will make that loan or not might be a different story, right? Now, let me branch to a couple of other things because people want to know, well, what are the benefits of LLC versus corporation? And there are benefits to a corporation, which is oftentimes the incentive that people want to use with others. Let's call it the team, or even let's call it the advisory board, or maybe even a person or persons becoming board members of the corporation. There's a way more easily to create what's called a stock option in the corporation that the IRS blesses as working for the benefit of the employees or the contractors that get it, versus today, and this may change over time, today it's not as easy to construct a way to have an option for the purchase of an LLC stake.
I see.
So we have lots of historical rules on what are called incentive stock options under a section of the Internal Revenue Code. And that often becomes the currency for getting people to help. So let's say you're not good, and some people are, at doing your own website, and you want a website that's going to start to sell this toothbrush or start to sell these umbrellas. You want to go to someone that might take a stake in the company through a stock option. They're not a voting share member. They don't get to go to shareholder meetings. They really can't do things to make your life miserable because they don't have shareholder rights. But they have a right that's vesting over time based on services.
So they use their expertise and services in lieu of the stock or the...
That's right. That's right. So the option represents for them, I have no liability. I haven't paid in capital. I've simply given some services. I got the option, and it vests based perhaps on some additional services over time. And hopefully it'll be worth something. Now, the truth is it might not be, or they may say, I don't even want to exercise the option because I don't believe in it enough to put more cash into it. So you'll get these situations, and we see them happen, particularly when the stocks, the company doesn't do so well. there might be a lot of options that are granted based on a reservation of shares that represents that pool of maybe 10 or 15% of the capital structure. But the various people that have the options all disappear. They don't exercise.
Right.
So really there was a no-cost transaction for that help.
Right.
It's kind of a bit of a magic of Silicon Valley that people will take the risk and provide help, hoping that you will get finance. But if you don't get finance and the business doesn't take off and the toothpaste doesn't sell and the toothbrush don't sell, then at least the net result is it's not like you're having to pay those people, right?
So if your recommendation would be if someone's they think they're starting a true company where they're going to need they're going to need services, let's say web development, marketing, internet. I mean, if you're going to legal services, this is probably someone that should form a corporation versus an LLC?
Right. Generally speaking, if you're doing something that's distributing products and there's a desire to have employees, the bias is in favor of a corporation over an LLC. Now, there are people that say, no, why don't you start even more simple, because LLCs technically don't have as many corporate rules about holding meetings, having minutes, keeping a minute book. LLCs can have a simple operating agreement that says we're simply going to have a meeting, if we even desire to have one, once a year to report to the members how good was the gain or how bad was the loss, and then to issue some K-1s if it's treated as a partnership. You could actually have an LLC that's treated as a corporation. It's just that the law of LLCs in California, in Delaware, in elsewhere, and I think the first state to have it was Wyoming. Literally, they came up with this concept was, we don't want people to get bogged down in paperwork. We want to keep it simple. And so even today, people will ask, what's the better approach between, say, California versus Nevada versus Delaware? And there are trade-offs. And the question becomes, well, if you're staying in California and you're operating in California and your employees and you are going to be in California, and you're not going to take investor money, so Delaware is not as important from the sort of trademark point of view, you file as a California LLC and try to keep the cost down. Now, if you're taking money where, say, the investor, like might even be an overseas investor, says, well, Delaware has a better set of corporate laws and corporate judiciary. They understand things better. We'd like to invest in a Delaware entity. You might be biased in favor of having a Delaware filing for the LLC. All of these states, by the way, are going online, so you get the same benefits of filing online.
All right, what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back, so stick with us on Facebook. We'll continue to stream live as we do every time we do the show. Today we're talking about the pros and cons of an entity. Which one should you form? Is it an LLC? Is it a corporation? We talked about the dangerous sole proprietorship, which is not a good idea.
Not a good idea.
Not a good idea. All right, stick with us. We'll be back in about a minute. We'll continue the show.
For more information on today's program, visit RERadiolive.com. That's RERadiolive.com.
Getting ready to buy or sell a home in 30, 60, or 90 days? Check out bundleselect.com to find out how you could save 20% or more on your entire transaction, real estate, lending, and title. With bundleselect.com, technology and a personal concierge are at your service to save you time and money. The real estate world is changing, and it's finally in your favor. Bundle Select's hand-picked team of experts will compete for your business, so you'll save thousands of dollars by bundling services. Bundleselect.com gives you all the control, including using your own realtor. I'm Joe Kuchera with Real Estate Radio Live, and I have been on the radio educating consumers for years. I'm here to tell you BundleSelect.com is the newest way to save money on real estate. By bundling services like real estate, lending, and title, you could save tens of thousands of dollars. We'll even take care of your move for free anywhere in the Bay Area. Visit BundleSelect.com. That's BundleSelect.com.
The 20% savings estimates are based on industry averages, and the free move is provided that the minimum amount of vendor savings covers the cost of the move. Real estate broker CalBRE 00466-902.
Welcome back to Real Estate Radio Live. For more information on today's topic or guests, just visit RERadiolive.com. That's RERadiolive.com. Again, your host for today's edition of Real Estate Radio Live, Joe Kuchera.
All right, officially we're welcoming you back, although Jack and I try to do our best during the commercial breaks here.
To provide some comedy.
Yeah. This is Real Estate Radio Live, believe it or not, and we're providing education and information to a certain extent, different things. We have Jack Russo with us today, as we do usually once a week if we can, depending on the schedule. He's the managing partner for the Computer Law Group in Palo Alto. The topic is ongoing, and it's part 5 of starting something new in Silicon Valley. Today we're talking a little bit about the pros and cons of the entity. We discussed the entity, Jack, a few weeks ago, and now you really want to kind of compartmentalize it and break it down and, like, you know, what are the pros and cons of it? And we just started that. So in our follow-up segment here, you want to continue on that, some of the differences?
Right. I want to get into, there is a simple way, and millennials want simple, and I like simple too, to think that LegalZoom, and there's 4 or 5 other companies that do this, can allow a press-button approach to doing it. And I can tell you, I have seen so many cases, often after litigation is filed, which makes it even worse, where what happened was simply defective from the start. And I'm not really here to sell our services because as a corporate startup firm, although we do a lot of corporate startups, our focus tends to be strategic IP, how to get ready to be in the best position to make that intellectual property as valuable as possible. We see so many situations where the entity was not correctly selected or correctly documented over and over again. And often the worst version of that is when there's an internal squabble between the shareholders or the LLC members, and there was a failure to think through very simple things like, hey, what happens if one of us dies? Now, LegalZoom's not going to cover a buy-sell agreement. They're not going to cover a stock option plan. They're not going to cover a advanced idea, which there are many, and I mentioned one, which is, why don't we put some of these shares at a very low value, early shares, into a Roth IRA for our grandson? Because if those shares turn out to be worth a lot, like eBay became, or like Facebook became, can you imagine if Zuckerberg had the prescience? Maybe he did. Maybe he had good advice. I kind of doubt it because it certainly hasn't surfaced. That he said, well, I'm going to put some of the early Facebook shares when the valuation was relatively low into a Roth IRA and maybe a family member's Roth IRA. And now that huge gain is all tax-free for that particular stake in Facebook. Now, you have to do the valuation correctly because a Roth IRA has limits. You have to get the Pensco or other outside custodian account. But there is ways to do that kind of smart planning, and it doesn't get done in the simple push-button approach because it's too sophisticated. No, it's just there's too much. And so someone like LegalZoom, and there's a few others out there, I would agree 100%. Most of them boilerplate or maybe kind of off the shelf or off the type of, they're not going to get into the detail that you're talking about. They're not going to get into detail, and what they're not going to do is going to give you a more customized view of what you have to be ready to anticipate. So when you're starting a business with another, what would otherwise be a co-partner, that person could eventually become adverse, and this is what lawyers are trained to think about. No push-button service is trained to think about, well, what happens if you guys end up disagreeing? Do you have a mechanism? Do you have a way to allow one person to buy the other out? Do you have a way to think through how to set a valuation for that buyout? Do you have an arbitration clause or an appraisal clause that will simplify it? Do you have a way to think about, we've settled this in paperwork? I don't want to call it a prenuptial agreement because it shouldn't be thought that way. There's so much that could go on. There's a lot. Death, disabled, divorce. There's a lot. Right? There's a lot that can go on. What if another guy's crooked? What if your partner all of a sudden you find out that he's got a warrant of his arrest? And it happens. I mean, I could tell a story. Knock on wood that this didn't happen to me. I invested in a company and we did it out of the fund, and they ran into some trouble, and they called me up and they said, we're in some trouble, and all the board members are disappearing, and just us left. By the way, would you join our board of directors? And of course, I had to say, look, lawyers don't like taking board positions. You guys are on the East Coast. I'm here in California. I'm not really able to know. Well, sure enough, a few months later, I find out there's a major fight where inevitably lawsuits end up getting filed. And guess who would have been sued but for the grace of God that I didn't take that position? And you have to counsel people about if you're going to be on the board, there's certain fiduciary duties that attach. You have to think about whether you want to have a lot of clarity that, hey, is there D&O insurance? That's an extra burden for a startup to get directors and officers liability insurance. You could also get it for an LLC, although, frankly, the carriers are not as used to writing policies for LLCs as they are for corporations, and that's another factor to think about, because if you're taking money and you're taking big money from investors, so I'll give you another case, another startup. As I said in previous shows, this whole cryptocurrency area is completely off to the races. And we had a client that came in and said, I'm starting essentially a fund to deal with cryptocurrencies. Where do I do it? How do I do it? And the first question I asked is, okay, how much are you going to have in this fund? He says, I don't know, maybe like $4 billion. Billion with a B. Remember, those are big dollars. Well, where's it coming from? Oh, a sovereign fund in overseas, somewhere in Egypt, let's say, because there's a lot of money there. And they want to be in cryptocurrencies, and they have no expertise, right? So then the issue that comes up is, well, how does that get structured? How do you make sure you're protected? How do you make sure that, because cryptocurrencies are inherently volatile, that $4 billion can become, a fraction of it, or it could become 3x it. Obviously, in the best case, if you can have this wild imagination that it's going to be great, you imagine that that money's going to come in, it's going to get invested, it's going to be able to get returned, and so it's only the house's money that's being played with. And then you're sort of bulletproof, because you're saying to the investor, look, I got you your money back. Now we're just at the roulette wheel
I think
with the house's money.
The message that I'm hearing loud and clear is that if you're going to have a company, you think it's going to do something, or you're going to put a lot of money, resources, and time and energy to it, do it right. Choose the right entity, number one. Number two, use a legitimate attorney or firm to help you draft that and draw those up, right? That's the message, because, again, do you want to invest all your time, energy, and then potentially bring other people in and make them subject to some of these issues that could come up if you don't?
And the way I think about it is, if you are reluctant to see a professional, or maybe several, because you might want to be talking to your CPA at the same time or getting a CPA. If you're just inherently reluctant, that probably says something about your belief in the value of the idea.
I agree.
Now, that's a funny statement, because
that's a good point,
it's a way to say, look, if you're going to go fishing and you're really going to go to fish for some really big fish, you're probably not going to refuse to buy some decent bait. You're probably not going to go on, a little rowboat, because you're never going to catch any fish doing that. Now, some people do. They just go and throw their line in, off the side of the Golden Gate Bridge, and they kind of hope that something happens. The odds are nothing's going to happen. And if you're so reluctant that you're not really thinking that way, you probably need to go back to that notebook and ask yourself, why am I being reluctant here to take some of my savings? That's why, by the way, the professional will look at the degree to which you're in, whether you have skin in the game. And if you're particularly asking the lawyer, and lots of lawyers, including us, are entrepreneurial, to defer and discount fees and do stuff that helps your cash flow. If you're reluctant to show that you have skin in the game, that professional is going to say to you, you're not real. You don't have skin in the game. You're not really interested. You're sort of doing something fictional. And, there are people that do stuff that's fictional because, perhaps their spouses, why don't you get a job? And they're like, I met a woman last night.
What do you mean a job?
Last night there was a woman who said, my husband is an entrepreneur. I really should say he's a stay-at-home dad, but, he's got these great ideas. Nothing ever happens.
He's a practicing entrepreneur.
And she said, I'm the breadwinner, and I guess that's abnormal, but, he says the next big thing's going to happen. I keep waiting. I said, how long have you been married? Well, we got 3 kids. I'm planning to put them through college. I guess we were married about 12 years.
Well, here's a lesson I'll tell you before we finish up today, and this is a lot of good information because Jack has lived it, I have lived it. Matter of fact, in the next couple of weeks, we're going to talk about some projects we're working on and a number of different things. But I think the other message is this is a lot of work, right? I mean, it sounds fun and sexy in Silicon Valley and billions of dollars being thrown around, but if you decide to come up with a product or a service, an idea, be prepared to work, number one.
Be prepared to work and be prepared to hear the bad news that what you said is not going to work.
Right.
So, I mean, we don't know if this Quip thing is going to work for this toothbrush, and we don't know if the umbrella. Then my mom would be like, who needs that? I buy it from Walmart. That's a $14 umbrella. I can get something for $3.49. We don't know where things will land, but you have to be ready to take the good with the bad. And what I often say, and this scares people, starting a business is like deciding to go on a journey where you're going to take 100,000 steps. Now, I'm good on a particular hiking day to maybe get to 20,000 steps, but 100,000 steps is like a 5-day journey, right? That's a serious thing. Now, that's probably even a trivialized way of saying you are going on a major mission, and if you're not committed to go on that mission, then you should not be doing it. And I remember at one point, and I'll just tell this final story because you'll get a kick out of it. I remember when I decided to leave, as I said, a great law firm, still love them, Fenwick & West, Davis Stafford Cummins & Fenwick was what it was when I joined. They're now a really big firm. I still see Bill Fenwick, and Joel Kellman last week was in the office, some of the founders, and Blake Stafford's a good friend. And, you know, of course, West died, so people get old, right? So when I left, I remember, you know, of course they said, no, you can't leave, stay, da-da-da-da. And I remember people saying, you know, there aren't really a lot of people that will jump out of the airplane without a parachute, but Jack is one of those guys. Now, I had done a bit of planning and thinking about it, but I was not certain it was going to work.
I hear you.
And I had to, and of course I had no money. I remember I asked my mom for a loan. She was like, all my money's tied up in real estate. I said, okay. So I was lucky enough to get an angel client who actually the firm didn't want. They were like glad to give them up. Who said, yeah, you know, tell me what you need and make sure you take care of me. And the rest is history. I could tell lots of stories about them and the entrepreneur that ran that business. But the short and the long of it was I was ready to take all my savings and basically
bet on yourself.
And bet on myself. And if I had to fail, if that had happened, I would just go crawling back to some other law firm probably, although I might have gone back there. I mean, it's, you know, lawyers who are good can always find something to do. There's no question about that.
I believe that anybody that's good at any service or, you know, industry, I'm just my belief, if you truly have, I mean, if you need to work and you need to make an income, you need to feed, I've always said somehow, some way, right, if you need to put food on the table, pay your rent, whatever, put a roof over your head, however you want to look at it, you make it happen.
I think you make it happen. What I'm finding that's interesting, just I was thinking as you were saying those things, I'm seeing more and more people who are saying, you know, people who are in Silicon Valley are very driven. And there are a lot of people getting older that are saying, you know, maybe it's time to leave. So this signal of Peter Thiel moving to Los Angeles, of course, the subtext is he's moving to Los Angeles, but he actually got rights to live in New Zealand. So his plan B, and a lot of wealthy people's plan B, if we pollute this part of the world, New Zealand may be unpolluted. Like New Zealand may be the protected zone. But the point that you're making is absolutely true. You have to be committed because you know what? Everyone else around you is also committed.
Absolutely.
And they may represent competition and the race is on. And if there is a good idea around a toothbrush or an umbrella, there are going to be a lot of other people that are working on a similar or maybe even better idea.
Well, yeah, and we're going to have to duck out in a minute, but I won't say the last thing because we're going to continue this conversation. The other thing that comes to mind as you mentioned that is you had better be ready and demonstrate that you're ready because guess what? If you're asking other people to come around you and put their time, services, and money in, guess who they're looking at too, right?
That's right. Absolutely. As we
so you had better be ready.
You better be ready, and you better be ready to say you're the leader, you have a team, you're in the right market, you've got a plan.
Yeah. All right. Right before we duck out, Jack, again, remind those that want to contact you where they could reach you.
Jack at computerlaw.com is probably the easiest, but the phone is 650-327-9800.
Great. All right, thanks for tuning in. Next week we'll be back. We're not sure what day, but I think we're going to visit some of the financing, how to get some of the money, the venture capital. We're going to get into that and much, much more. Again, for more information, go to reradiolive.com. Thanks for checking in with us today. Take care. Till next time.
You've been listening to Real Estate Radio Live. For more information on today's program, visit reradiolive.com. That's reradiolive.com. Subscribe to our podcast. Discover more at reradiolive.com.